Howdy there, folks. This video is an update for the backers of Chill Mist Valley, a scenario module we kickstarted about 2 years ago. It's also an explanation of how I design mass combat systems and the place I think warfare holds in the game. The project has suffered numerous delays and setbacks in development, but running a playtest campaign in my Discord server, link below, has illuminated me. It's solved a number of mechanical problems, taught me how to better seed adventures through the scenario, and provided me with a number of resources to take advantage of when generating the campaign's various mechanics. As announced, we went on hiatus at the start of October 2022. The initial plan was to go on hiatus for about 6 months, but the test campaign, along with transitioning to remote work, has given me such a boost in terms of creativity, motivation, and consistent stimuli that I just couldn't keep away. I'm here today to give you an update on one of the very last stretch goals achieved on our Kickstarter, Warfare. For the rest of my viewers, this is also an opportunity for you folks to learn how I integrate mass combat into tabletop role-playing games, and a bit of my design process for designing Warfare to begin with. I'd like to open my explanation with the competing constraints I had to solve for. Complicated business. First up, 5th edition has a lot of mechanical gates or hoops to jump through before you're allowed to have fun, to play the game. These hoops are largely unconnected, relatively simple themselves, but they slow down the game. Any new mechanics either need to collapse the existing mechanical hoops, making them more complex but faster to those who've learned them, or so simple that the players don't need to engage the hoops at all. Well, my backers didn't request I rewrite the 5th edition combat system, nor did they pay me to do so. So I landed on the idea of a mass combat system so simple your referee could run it in the background without player input if desired. That's one solution. But this clashes with yet another constraint. For a few players, Warfare as a mode of play meets a character fantasy of theirs. War is fun, war is sport, always has been, always will be. Watching armies clash, swords a swinging and screaming all the while is an absolute blast, and if you play your cards right, make the system just granular enough to envision individual members going down without taking as much time as 5th edition combat, it just sings. So clearly, I need a system that can satisfy players looking to fight with and in armies, without dropping 40 Monster Manual, Town Guards, or Bandits on top of them. There's a third constraint as well, undiscovered until we were already far along in the design. Several characters which hold armies in the module are a player type called patrons. Patrons are characters which would normally be NPCs whose actions are not resolved at the table, aside from direct confrontations, but are rather dictated from outside the table itself. These players are responsible for managing major faction heads and other political figures with assets and resources like units. Because they spend most, if not all of their time away from the table, I find them deserving of a good time, of a game to play. Warfare is that game. Warfare is how these patrons enact their will on the world. In a combat-centric game like 5th edition, it is the missing link to diplomacy, domain building, and a host of other game modes 5th edition thought players didn't deserve to enjoy. So how did I solve my Gordian knot? Quite literally, I split the damn thing down the middle. Warfare in Chill Mist Valley has 2 separate modes of resolution, quick play and grand battles. But let's take a step back from these competing constraints for just a moment. Regardless of how I eventually solved my problem, I knew there were key details my units had to abide by, else I wouldn't believe in the design. Let's dive into the anatomy of our soldiers. We have at least 6 explicit statistics, as well as unit types and subtypes, along with different ancestries and potential traits. Starting off with unit types, we've got the standard units, infantry, archers, cavalry, and siege engines, and all of them do mostly what you'd expect them to. We also have 4 unit subtypes: shock troops, gunmen, mounted archers, and scouts. We made unit subtypes separate from traits because they have a more significant overlap with whatever we consider the parent unit to be. There are also single figure units like heroes, mages, and giants. Heroes cover warlords and various officer levels, whereas mages help cover wizards and wardens. Giants are what they say on the tin. We'll talk more about these folks in subsequent videos, just know they're here to cover the most important narrative and mechanical roles within warfare. We also have different effects based on ancestries. Typical player humanoid ancestries like dwarves, humans, elves, and goblinoids have statistics which modify their overall performance and specific unit types. Taking goblins, for instance, they perform poorly in almost every statistic y'all can find, but they're cheap, making for good cannon fodder units, and have enormous bonuses to the scout unit subtype. On top of that, there are fantastical ancestries. These ancestries can't be recruited as the standard loadout of units, but rather act as 1 or 2 unit types unto themselves. Dryads, for instance, have great ranged attacks, but they're also decent melee combatants and have a unique charm effect to turn units against each other. Of course, units have experience levels improved by participating in and winning various battles. Experience improves pretty much all unit statistics, including unit dice, over time, but not all at the same time. I guess upkeep is the exception to this. Units get more expensive to pay, recruit, upkeep as time goes on, the more experienced they are, but y'all were probably expecting that already. Alright, now let's talk unit statistics. First up are unit dice. Unit dice are a rough approximation of your unit's effectiveness in and strength to act or react in combat. If you're attacking, trying to overcome a spell's effects, or making a last-ditch effort to recover morale, you roll unit dice. Unit dice are always represented by a 6-sided die, and most units start at 2 dice. A few, usually hordes, start at 1 die, and cavalry are default 3, but usually average down to 2. Siege engines almost always start with 4. Kill and morale are the statistics we use to determine how hard it is to remove a given unit from play. When a unit rolls to attack another unit, they're rolling against the opposed kill and morale statistics. If you roll equal to or above a unit's kill, congratulations, y'all get to inflict casualties. If you don't meet the unit's kill but do manage to roll above morale, you chase some or all of the opposed unit's soldiers away from their current position, driving them back a move. Rolling above morale 3 times can break troops as if they suffered a casualty. Now, move affects how far a unit can go during the charge and march actions. Units have like a minimum base movement speed that can't be dropped below 0, at least when you're making the unit, and some terrain modifies speed along with other statistics. If you want to move at least 1 square uphill with siege engines, you're pretty much forced to march. But besides that, you don't have to worry about accidentally building a unit that can't move at all. Range is what you'd expect. This determines how far out the unit can make attacks. Even having a range of 1 allows infantry to attack faster with javelins and darts earlier in the initiative without becoming engaged. Engaged, by the way, is a condition from getting attacked in melee by a unit. It represents the scrum bogging down your units and keeping them from moving. It offers opportunity attacks if you start targeting someone else in melee. A unit's cohesion is a health statistic meant to represent how tightly packed the folks composing your unit are. The strength of infantry is in how well they stay in formation, after all. If a unit at 0 cohesion suffers casualties, they're dropped from the combat. It's just too scattered to regroup. In quick play, cohesion is the only health statistic we care about. It's an easy, single-digit number to remember, and most units y'all fight will have 2 or less at the start of the battle. It still shows up in grand battles, though. Giants, some siege weapons, and more than a few spells are great for keeping units scattered, but not so great at killing off a unit once they are. That's what the support of cavalry is for, and an army built for this strategy can avoid worrying about our second health statistic here. Like Cohesion, figures is a statistic we use for determining unit health. It represents the rough number of people in a given unit, and believe it or not, it was the linchpin for solving our warfare problem. In grand battles, the more involved and granular mode of warfare, your unit typically doesn't drop out of play until all of their figures are wiped out. Why do we even care about the number of figures? Because players are best equipped to kill small portions of a given unit, and we want this to have a meaningful impact on the combat as it progresses. It also provides us with a number of mechanical hooks too long to list, but we're going to try and list out a few anyways. Like we said, players can attack the units. We have statistics for hero-type characters in mass combat. Players can already interface in quick battles and grand battles that way, but it's with more generic action. This lets the players target units with their character abilities and attack specific characters within those units. If a unit of dwarves has a standard bearer keeping morale together, or a unit of zombies has a necromancer attached to it, we can create new ways of advancing combat in zoomed-in scenarios, just like we do in regular combats. It lets us scale down units for use in more regular combats. As it turns out, a unit's figures and unit dice work pretty well as hit points and damage dice respectively. Managing every individual combatant's hit points against an 8th level party is stupid when it comes to the equivalent of town guards or low-level bandits, but that's because WotC never approached this issue the correct way. Start from a horde, start from a unit of men as the baseline, and scale down to individual combatants from there. Conditions can affect individual entities instead of entire units. If Dryads start charming a unit of men, I could say it charms a section of the unit as opposed to the entire unit. I can split the unit up to cover more ground or condense the unit to bog down cavalry. Following from this, I can actually split the unit's attacks, dealing less damage but adding new tactical options. Just to recap, our figure statistic lets us adjudicate regular character abilities being used against units, targeting unique or important individuals within a given unit, use or scale down units for use in normal combats, and expand the decision trees of players in a mass combat. In summary, now that y'all understand what our units are made out of, it's time to talk about game modes. As mentioned earlier, Warfare in Chill Mist Valley has 2, technically 3, but we're saving that for a later date, modes of play. Quick play relies on cohesion to determine whether a given unit can continue fighting. In quick play, suffering casualties of any number from a successful attack reduces your cohesion by 1. Now remember, a unit at 0 cohesion is removed from play when it suffers casualties. That's how it works both in grand battles and in quick play. It's just that quick play only relies on cohesion to keep things moving. We also ignore loading times and double movement speeds in this mode. It's fast, you're only really concerned with whether a unit scores a successful hit against someone else, and most abilities fall by the wayside. This is the mode for referees running warfare during active combats or by themselves. It's that easy, that simple. Grand battles are a completely different ballgame. We've spelled out the number of figures, which can be roughly approximated to people for all but a selected few units, and taking casualties reduces this number of figures. Not only that, your ability to inflict casualties and routes is limited to the number of figures remaining in your unit. If you only have 6 people left in a unit, you can't, as a default, inflict more than 6 casualties. Loading times and ability cooldowns are observed between rounds, making your positioning and deployment far more important. Movement speeds are normal. The more granular resolution contributes to better unit balance and better represents the intended strength of some more fantastical units. The conditions are longer lasting, more involved. The unit types get to differ between each other more, shine and show off their use cases. The difference between ballistas and trebuchets don't matter much in quick play, but in grand battles, it could be the difference between whether you wipe out a unit. Now I'm sure this all sounds theoretically fine, but I can't imagine dumping all this information without an opportunity to play it out. I polled folks on my channel on my community page to see what factions they'd enjoy seeing clash. And if you'd like to participate in polls like these, if you want a fun material to use in your games, I'm gonna ask you all to hit the subscribe button. You thought I'd wait till the end of the video to ask. While you're at it, hit the notification bell, and on your way to download our playtest PDF in the description, do let us know what y'all think in the comments. So who won our community poll? The first result, the juiciest, Dwarves vs. Dryads. Combat more likely than you might expect in our module. Industry and colonial expansion versus nature. Dwarves will be fielding artillery, including a unique catapult, archers, crossbowmen, a unique unit wielding flamethrowers, some gunmen using the slug rounds dwarves find most preferable, and a mess of shielded infantry. Dryads will have their standard units, long-range archers, a spellcaster known as a listener, a few tree men, and a unique type of unit only Dryads and Wardens can bring along, known as a wild horde. It's composed of animals, natural and unnatural, which will change unit type each time they successfully inflict casualties. Personally, I think the Dryads have an advantage thanks to their overall superior range and movement. However, the Dwarves do have some rather prominent artillery units, potentially forcing Dryads towards the enemy if they want to do anything more than small portions of damage. Additionally, the Dwarves will have time to fortify their positions along with a broad numbers advantage. This scenario isn't designed as an even fight, but rather pits forces with deeply asymmetrical strengths and use cases against one another. That's probably why the community voted for it. Alright folks, time to pack it in. I hope y'all enjoyed hearing me ramble on about warfare and the ways I approach its foundations. Furthermore, I hope y'all have fun with the test scenario and hurry on back to let me know what you thought of it. If you're struggling to find someone to play with, I recommend joining our Discord, link below, or sharing this video in other communities. Remember, the more the channel grows, the easier it is to release art and design and find like-minded individuals. And believe me, there's a lot of you out there, far more than the viewership our channel currently has. When you do wrap up with the test scenario, or need my help finding a partner, hell, I'll play it out with you. Stop by the comments with your questions and feedback. If y'all want to keep participating in community events like this, hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bells of war so y'all never miss a new video. Alright folks, I'm out of here. Peace.